Okay, I think we should press the go live button, so I've done that now. Hi Chris, how's your Thursday?
My Thursday's going very good. How's your Thursday going, Lorna?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much under control, to be honest. I can hear myself twice, which happens really often. There we go. Okay, I think I've cracked that. I can't hear myself twice. Now my Thursday is even better.
We're professionals.
Well, at 1 minute past the hour, I'd prefer it if you didn't jinx us yet, if that's okay. Like, give us a chance to get started and really get into this thing before you condemn us one way or the other. I feel there's time, either way.
I like to set the tone early.
Yeah, it's all good. I feel like the chat is bizarrely tiny. And maybe it's just that you're only typing emojis and not words. I'm going to keep an eye on that and maybe try and do something with it. Chris...
I can type in more emojis. Yeah.
You can... Well, listen, I want you to multitask typing more emojis with... this is your first time on this stream. So do you want to tell people what is going on here? Like, who you are, what you do, why I've kidnapped you today?
Sure, yeah. So my name's Chris Tankersley. I am the PHP developer advocate for Vonage. So I'm in charge of the PHP SDK, maintaining all of that, and then working with all the rest of the SDK maintainers to make sure that everybody has a nice, enjoyable experience using our APIs through our SDKs.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Well, you do a good job with that.
I hope so.
I've been doing PHP a long time. I'm super happy to have you in charge of the PHP stuff. And I think a bunch of people who know us know, actually, we've known each other quite a long time, but we've only been open source colleagues until now, where we're like actual real colleagues. So
yep.
It's all good and exciting.
It is. I'm really enjoying working with you.
Yay. So in the chat, we've got a few people here. I can see Kevin already. Hi, Kevin. Thanks for joining and for testing out the chat functionality. That was good, because it turns out Chris can't type large numbers of emojis while talking. So I challenged him, but he didn't rise to my challenge.
Challenge accepted. I don't know what emojis I have. That's the problem.
I find it really difficult to type in chat while I'm talking. But if you could, there we go. You rose to the challenge. What even are those?
Most of those are the default one. The first one's actually mine.
Like a hype gnome. He's awesome.
Yeah.
I like him.
Ooh, I've got this one. I've got a reindeer. And
what?
I've got that one. If that comes across.
Yeah. There's nothing I've got nothing to say against reindeer. That is working out quite well. Cool. So
little puppies.
Hi,
that's what
puppies.
I'm here for. I'm here just for the emojis.
Honestly, so is everybody else. So that's why I invited you as my co-host, because I felt it was something that was really missing from my stream until you got here. So thank you so much. Lauren is here as well. Hi, Lauren. Thanks for joining us. It's we're all very excited. Now we've shifted the stream, so we're in a different time slot this week. But this hasn't diminished my excitement at all. So this week I've invited Chris because I think his input on my preferred topic will be really valuable. However, this is developer drop-in. So if you're watching the stream and you have questions, then you should just go ahead, no matter how off the current today topic it seems. If it's about Vonage APIs or code things you think we might know, then your questions are really welcome. And I always challenge people to derail the stream, where the question's so good we can't resist but stop what we're doing and answer it. So I'm gonna float the idea that maybe we're gonna talk about webhooks today. And if that isn't what happens, that is also fine. So Chris, I know that you've worked a lot with different APIs and webhooks and that kind of thing. But I feel, for me at least, at Vonage I work more with webhooks than I have in other places. Is that your experience?
I think so. I think most people consume APIs. They don't really build applications that have to interact with APIs like we do. Now, that being said, I think because so much of it is passive, the Vonage APIs are very reactive. You have messages coming in, you have voice calls coming in, which most APIs are just reading data from somewhere. So I think this can be a very foreign concept to some people, just because you're not usually waiting for someone to react and use your application from the API side in that way. So once you start talking about it, I don't think it's a terribly complicated subject once you understand what's going on, but it's just something that most APIs probably don't do.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I'm just going to pause and say hi to Diana, who's in the chat. Hi, Diana. Thanks for joining.
Diana.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I think with webhooks as well, it's not so much that it's conceptually difficult, but it's in terms of your application setup, it's so different to at the point in your code where you want to do a thing, request the data arrives, and off you go. You can do whatever you want with whatever you get. Whereas webhooks are, because they're event driven, you don't have any control over that. Your code has to be able to receive that and respond, which can be just a bit of a challenge to think about and to implement for the first time. Once you've seen the moving parts move, then it's not rocket science. But if you haven't set this stuff up before, I think it can definitely be a bit of a challenge.
And I think there's another layer to it too, of it's not just I know what route I have to, when someone hits a route, I know what to display. You have to think about programmatically, like if this type of data comes across, I have to be able to react to that. Because like with the voice API, for example, we'll send you a whole bunch of events and you have to be able to programmatically decode and react to those in kind of a, not quite real time, but you have to think about all the different ways that you can react to individual events coming across the wire.
Yeah, I think voice API is a really good example because we use webhooks in a bunch of places, and it's a really good, things happen even if you don't react to a webhook to start the call. Things happen during the call that you also need to react to. If you are watching the stream rather than just listening to us, then you will have noticed something just popped up on stream, and this is a poll for us to tell you, for you to tell us who we're talking to. What's your experience with webhooks? How do you see yourself, and kind of why are you here? Yesterday I did some polls with another online event, and my last option on every poll was described as the troll option. So I've included a troll option for our delightful audience today, just in case they should need one. I know that a bunch of people will have popped in just to hang out with you, actually, Chris. That's also another reason why you're here. So it's a fun thing. And it's really good to see people voting already.
Some people are excited. That's great. We have a lot of experts in the audience.
That's good. I mean, maybe we could just go for coffee and they could take over. I mean,
that works for me. That's how I try to run most of my talks. If there is someone more knowledgeable in the room, they can take the stage and go ahead and go on.
Or at least in Q&A, someone asks a question and someone else would you like to answer the question? I like to referee Q&A rather than actually do any of the A myself. I like to just facilitate. And of course we can do that today as well. Lauren likes we have a poll, so yes. This is a new venture for me, Lauren. Slowly learning to talk and type at the same time. And yeah, put the stream up as well. Awesome. So with the webhooks, I always describe webhooks as event-driven HTTP. And I think one thing, and Chris, you'll remember this as well, once upon a time, we would have had probably Jenkins, Hudson, anyone?
Still do in many places.
But instead of reacting to something happening, that Jenkins would have been checking in on the source control system every minute or something to see if there was a change, so pulling every minute to see if there's a change that we should do something with. And from this memory, I have extrapolated that it is actually not a surprise that it is GitHub who are are king of the webhooks. Because if you think about how many repositories you have, how many I have, how many are on the work systems, how many developers use GitHub, right? That's a lot of internet polling traffic. And there's a lot of time where I'm not committing to any of my repos.
Well, and you think of all the all the dead bandwidth being used to just say, nope, nothing has changed over, on some of my repositories, they only get updated every couple of months. So if you're polling that once every minute, that is just a ton of dead bandwidth being used up.
Absolutely. And I can't speak for GitHub, but I wouldn't like to handle that kind of server capacity for essentially no gain. Mm-hmm. So their systems were one of the first places that I started to integrate with it. And it's also one of the places that the developers are most likely to see it. Something terrible has just happened to your video. I'm going to try and...
It's been doing that all day.
Are you feeling okay? I'm just going to try and fix you. Hold on.
I need more coffee.
Yeah, we'll just quickly refresh Chris. There we go. Okay, that might come up again. I'll keep an eye on it. We are experimenting with new tech on this stream today, so we'll see how that pans
maybe
out.
my video is haunted. We'll have new creepypasta come out of this. That'll be good.
It was a little bit creepy. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. Sorry, that was creepy. Okay. A little bit of abstract art occurred. You have 15 seconds left on the poll, everybody. So GitHub was one of the first places that I really worked with APIs, and it is exactly for this. So somebody pushed something to the repo, and I get an update from that. It's like, you explain this to people, and it's like, yeah, we did wait a whole minute to kick off, up to a minute to kick off a job when we just pushed something. Now I would get quite cross if I had to wait a whole 60 seconds, really. It was a bit of a challenge. You can no longer vote on this poll. Yeah, it is done. And we have got, what is a webhook? We've got excited to learn more. And the majority vote is webhooks expert. So I expect some very good questions to come from our audience today. Because some of them are already familiar with the topic. So that's really cool. I think that's nice. Awesome.
Yeah. I look forward to the actuallys coming out of this.
Yeah, that is the less polite version of what I was trying to say. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The Chris translation
yep.
of things I was trying to say. Awesome. Cool. So my tentative plan is that we should build one of these things, and then I'm gonna pick your brain about, once we've built one, the stuff that you would do that isn't what you would do for a DevRel demo, the stuff that you would do if you were really shipping this stuff. Mm-hmm. So we're going to start nice and easy, and then we're going to try and ramp it up a bit and get some real. I'm gonna pick your brain for some technical advice for working with webhooks. Cool. So I'm going to start super simple. So how do you feel about let's receive an incoming SMS?
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly common use case for a lot of our APIs. So something comes in, we need to tell our application how to handle it.
Perfect. And I am going to do this with PHP because you're here, and I can't think of a single reason why we would not want to do that.
We power 80% of the web.
At least. Okay. So let me find some terminal type place where I can put my code, and let's get you and me and the screen all in the same place. We may have brought the chat with us, we may not. Okay, and I have not set this up so I can see OBS as well. Hang on. You can look at my browser instead for a second while I press some more buttons. That is better. Better. Yes. Awesome. Cool. Code coming up. So, if I find this terminal, which is somewhere here, and start a new project, I'm just going to start with something really simple. So I'm going to use a number that I already have. And if you want to play along at home, you should install the Nextmo CLI tool super fast, because that will help a lot. And we're going to work on receiving SMS messages to a local script. So I've got a number, I'm going to write some code, and then I'm going to wire up the Nextmo part. Let's keep this incredibly simple. I'm going to call it sms.php. Now, Chris, I sometimes warn people, like, hey, I'm writing a file with a .php extension. How many PHP developers today would still write a standalone .php file? Is that a thing?
I do it all the time. I don't know if that's a common use case, but if I will write just little one-off things to throw up there and have it work. I probably usually don't get into frameworks until I've got 3 or 4 pages going and I know what in the world I'm building.
Yeah, sometimes I don't know what problem I'm solving until I've started, right? Yep. Okay, well then Chris said it was fine and I'm going to carry on.
It's fine, it's totally fine.
I have permission. So I'm going to just output the contents of, let's just have whatever comes in request. Now by default, that is true, spelled wrong. By default, the incoming SMS will be a get verb. You probably want post. You can switch it in your settings. This will work for either, so it doesn't rely on me knowing what the current status of my account is.
Yep.
Lauren's testing the chat, and the good news is the chat did make it. Woo! Oh, we are absolutely nailing it today. So let's unpack this. We've got $_request, which I'm going to say is get and post, and in some other things, cookie?
No, it should just be get and post. I don't believe cookie is a part of that.
Perfect. Printr gives me the formatted array with like keys and values. Did you know that printr takes a second argument that returns it as a string instead of printing it? And I'm passing that to errorlog. So I am basically set to throw code at this thing, but let's test it with a little curl request before we go on and kind of get too far. On line 4, I'm returning echo OK. That's just so we can see what's going on. When you receive a webhook, you have to return a successful status. PHP will default to 200 for us. In other languages, you'll need to specifically set those headers. All right.
Otherwise, our APIs will continue to retry in some cases until it gets a valid response.
Yeah, so if you're seeing lots of requests coming in that you weren't expecting, then that's what that is. Okay, so built-in PHP web server. I'm just going to spin this up and specify the file name. Is there anything else I need to know about this before I run it?
No, so that should route everything through sms.php.
Let's give that a whirl. All right, it's up. Let's curl to this. So it's going to be on localhost. I really can't type today. Come on, 2 slashes, localhost. Chris saw me attempt to type the port number 8081 earlier, and that was I'd tell you that was a journey.
That did not work.
In true PHP tradition, I shall choose apple, the fruit, as my example. We'll do the curl request. Awesome. So I see the OK, and if I go back to where I'm running that code, you can see it dumped the data that I passed in. That's what came into the request. I think we're set. It's all working. So I now need to make this development stuff available on the internet. So I'm going to use ngrok. You want to talk while I do that?
Sure. So for anybody who's not familiar, ngrok is a nice little tunneling tool that will allow your application to be accessible to the greater internet. So for us to receive a webhook from Nextmo, we need to have that be publicly accessible, and short of actually throwing this code up onto a web server, we can just run ngrok locally and have everything kind of tunnel back and forth.
Awesome. So I have ngrok http 8080 because that's the type of traffic and the port that I want to start. And it comes up and gives me this little built-in console thing like this. And when I start making requests, you'll see them appear as well. I'm just going to go down one font size because I think it's big enough.
There we go.
And it's all wrapping. So I'm going to copy this. Is it just me, or did the ngrok URLs get longer recently?
I think they did, because it seems to be a lot of people, I think a lot more people are using it nowadays.
It's certainly a useful tool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've copied that URL, and I can immediately use it in my curl command. Or apparently I can't. Okay, let's try that again. And I'm going to give us a different fruit this time, so that we can check it. So I'm going to do a curl command. It comes back okay. The ngrok console shows me we got a get request to just slash, and then you can see in the PHP logs we got an incoming fruit cherry. So we are so far so good. I'm checking the chat and Diana says, I don't know how to configure my own private domain for ngrok. Maybe because I can't be bothered to read the docs. Diana, maybe. So
it does also require paying for an upgraded account to get custom subdomains and custom domains.
Yeah, so you can get a paid account with ngrok, and then all you need to do is through their web interface, you can register it. I'm just trying to think if there's anything in my ngrok config that I shouldn't share. Anybody know if I should open this file or not?
I don't know what your ngrok has in it, so I have no idea.
My auth token, which I guess I'm about to rotate. So I have a few subdomains and host names I can then use and reuse. So for example, you can see this one's called PHP Web Services. And that's because if you read my O'Reilly book, PHP Web Services, it uses the same ngrok URL all the way through. And I didn't want to lose custody of it. So I have a paid account and the registered random URL, meaning I can always use it, and the examples always work for me. So that's all that is. Diana's saying, oh, so hopefully we have given her some key skills there. And yes, I will need to go and refresh my auth token. I'm just going to write myself a note, hold on. It's not a true stream if you haven't leaked something.
Just tell me your password and I'll go change it for you.
Oh yeah, cool, thanks. I'll paste it to you right now.
Okay.
That is exactly how this works.
Just put it in chat, it'll be fine.
Someone can help me.
Yeah.
Lauren says secrets. Yeah, I mean, I have a secret scene, but I'm trying to show you the rest of the config file. It's a real challenge. I was streaming on my personal stream the other night, and my husband was watching it because I was streaming about his code. And afterwards, he came down with this big list of like, you need to close the homepage of your browser. You need to stop the autocomplete on this. You need. All right, security conscious. I'm sure both of my viewers copied down all of my passwords.
Mm-hmm. We're keeping a list.
It's only about a month since I last had to rotate my Vonage creds for exactly this reason. I criticised Alex for the way that he was not managing his secrets, and he was like, well, you never show yours, how do you do it? And I showed him, but I left the window open and then we went on stream. So that time it was me that got to rotate my creds. Fantastic. All right, we gave Diana light, so nothing else goes right today. I feel like we've done some good in the world.
Hey, we've dumped an array to console and we helped ngrok out. So
yeah, we should be.
We're batting 1,000 so far.
We should totally be on commission to ngrok.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what I was doing. Okay. Oh no, I want to show you one more thing with ngrok. I lost my terminal now because I was moving my windows around. Where's the ngrok console? It's here. Look for the magical line that says web interface. This has a localhost web interface. It's not that exciting this time, but it's going to get really exciting in a minute. I'm going to show it you anyway. So on localhost, port 4040, what window are we focused?
I see our developer docs.
Yeah, me too. I just can't focus them.
I don't know where you're typing. But...
I found it. All right. Okay. This is much harder than it looks, just so you know. What am I showing you? The local host, there we go, 4040, is the local ngrok console. So you get this nice little web interface. The left-hand pane is a list of all the requests that you've made, but with the newest first. So it's kind of this sort of a request. And then the right-hand pane tells you all about it. So you can see that I made a GET request with a query parameter, fruit, value cherry, and you can see the response. This is brilliant for debugging, but also you can go back and change your code and then press replay. So for example, if I go back to my PHP code and change something here, because it doesn't matter what the response is as long as it's a 200 OK, and then restart the web server, which is what I usually forget. Now I can go, not making any curl commands, come back to ngrok, press this replay button over there on the right, get another response, and this time it returns yay. So you can keep changing your code and replaying. So when you receive a webhook, you only need to produce that event once. If ngrok catches it, then you can just replay it. I use this loads. I'm guessing you use this loads too.
I use this a lot because then it cuts down on having to actually like kick off an event. I can just replay the same event over and over and over. I will totally admit to doing this for like the incoming SMS like a lot, just to keep testing code without having to actually send or an SMS from my phone.
Definitely. Speaking of which, let's do something more useful with this URL and then send some SMSs. I've picked a UK number, so it's probably me that gets to text. Where's my phone? Okay, it's here. Should have pasted the number into my phone first, but I didn't, so that will be an experience for us all.
First, we need to wire it up.
We do. So I've got a number. It's that one. I thought you were going to talk me through it. Go on, next Mo.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right.
I'm going to be honest, I don't use the CLI, so I
Oh, that's interesting. So do you normally do this with the dashboard?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The dashboard is also a good way to do it, but I am going to do it this way. You can, I guess if anyone wants to see the dashboard, they can volunteer you and I'll switch to your screen share.
Sure.
I'm going to do it this way, and for this I need to link SMS, put in the number that I'm linking, and then the ngrok URL, which must be there. Found it. Awesome. So what this does is it updates my number, so that when an SMS happens to this number, then this is the place that the message gets forwarded to. I'm going to paste you this URL in Slack, Chris, and you can
Okie dokie.
Hook up a US number to it, and then we can share numbers for people to text.
We can do that.
Alright, so this is coming to you. Where are you? I have lost you. I have lost you in my sea of windows. My problem is I didn't shut down all the windows that I was working on before we stopped what I was doing to do this. So I'm just like, there's about 3 half-done projects all over my desktop here. And I'm going to take this. Right, so I'm going to then switch to you. Where are you? You're there. Okay. And so is that your screen share? Yes, you're sharing my screen. No?
No.
There we go. I figured it out now. There's yours. Oh yes, nice IDE. What do you use, by the way?
I use Visual Studio Code.
Okay, cool. I'm getting to know Visual Studio Code. I'm starting to learn some of the keyboard shortcuts. Have you used it for a while?
Yeah, I've been using it for about 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Personal plug, if you search for Dragon Man Tank in the extensions, I've got a whole bunch of pre-built, it's just a bundle of PHP extensions I use quite heavily. between IntelliSense and playing around with different things in PHP, like code quality and stuff like that. Let's see. So we'll get a number here. We'll buy one. Steal that. Let's go to my numbers. And there it is. So let's edit that. And let me find my Slack now, wherever it's at. See, Lorna, I have your DMs starred so I can find them easy.
This might say something about how often I nag you about things. Maybe.
I think it's more how often I have to nag you with this. So if you edit a number, one of the things is an inbound SMS webhook, so we can paste that in there. Save, and now.
Can you turn your font size up a little bit? And then just bear with me a second because your video is a little bit smudgy.
My camera video?
No,
or the
your
screen share
video. It's going to rely on me working out how to do that. There you are. Oh, now you're really smudgy. So let me just...
Ooh.
Ew. Yeah.
Let me...
Better.
That screen share's been...
Better.
Is it better now?
Yes. I think it needs... It kind of loses track of itself and it can't recover. So
I think so.
Yeah.
So, whoops, didn't want to copy that. So if you have a number... Congratulations, here's all the numbers I have. If you edit the number, there'll be an option for an incoming SMS webhook. You can just paste in whatever value, so in this case we're going to use our ngrok, and then go down and save. That'll configure it. So this telephone number, paste in chat, should work to route back to her code.
Okay, so are we ready to test this theory?
As good as we can be, yeah.
I think so. Okay, so before we do that, hold on. I want to show you what happened on my screen, right? So I pasted you the link in chat.
Mm-hmm.
And what immediately happened was I got this request from the Slackbot link expander that immediately also requested the fav icon. So I thought that was quite funny. Okay, and you've pasted the US number, so I'm going to paste the UK number, which is going to be not that. That is my ngrok URL that I've also had on my clipboard quite recently. I use this copy queue clipboard memory thing, and it's amazing for this stuff. Okay, so that's the UK number. And if I go, I'm going to leave this here. Oh, we've got messages coming in. Was that you?
That was me.
Yay, okay, so I can see the summary. Here is everything that came in. I'm going to text in as well. Probably hear it on my microphone because this mic seems incredibly sound sensitive. There's the request from me. Excellent. So you can see a bunch of stuff, different fields coming in here. Do I get different fields to you? Okay, yeah, because it's coming in from different accounts, so we've got different config. That's quite interesting.
Because I don't have the signature stuff.
Yeah, so this is a really, really good demo, actually. If I'd thought hard about this, I might have planned it like this. That's not what happened. Cool. So Yvonne is asking, what are we doing with these numbers? Yvonne, if you want to text one of the numbers, then you can, and then your text will come into our code demo if you would like to. I'd like to give you the usual disclaimers. If I see any content here that might bother somebody else for any reason, then we just stop the demo immediately. That's how that works. Here comes another message. Yay! Okay, great. So, now I can do something else with this in PHP. If we look at what's come in with ngrok, so this is your request, Chris, that came in, and we've got API key, keyword, the message timestamp, a message ID, so you could get, if you want to look back at the logs, you fetch the messages, or if you get, I think the delivery receipts use the same message ID, then that would all be here. your phone number, and then the number that you registered that we sent it to. And it's just a text message. So we can have different types here. We can have Unicode, some other bits and pieces. So compare those fields with mine, which was the next message that came in. And mine says, this is fun. So I have some of the same ones, right? API key, keyword, message timestamp, message ID, MISDN, and text, and to, and type. But there are some extra ones. There's this nonce, something called sig, and then also timestamp. So the timestamp and the nonce are used to calculate the sig, which is short for signature. So what we're doing here is, I have opened ngrok, which accepts incoming post requests from the internet. What could possibly go wrong? Chris, tell me what could go wrong.
Nothing. Nothing can go wrong. This is totally safe, and you should accept whatever data comes across the wire in this case. No, in all seriousness, because you are open to the internet, if someone does get access to this URL, like say this was an actual production level system, you could just spam this endpoint with data, and if you know what format this data is expecting, you could send in additional things for us to accept and work with. So the signatures help validate that yes, this did come back. This actually did come from Vonage itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the reason that our requests look different is on my account I have the signatures enabled. For SMS API, they're not there by default. Some of the newer APIs they are. So you just need to ping support an email and be like, turn on signatures, and then you can verify. So the way it works is in my dashboard, I'll have a signature secret, and I can also set the hashing algorithm to use. And actually, I've no idea what that's set to, so these demos may work less well than planned. That's fine, we can go and update all the settings. Just need to remember to use my secrets screen when I do that. And the way that works is when Vonage is sending the information about the SMS that came to my number to the endpoint that I gave them, then they put all the fields in a certain order, add this timestamp and the nonce, number used once, right? Nonce. And they stick it all in there, and they take the signature secret and they stir it all together and they make this output signature. Now, we don't include the signature secret in the packet. This is something that I get from the dashboard, not from this. Then I use this signature secret to mix in with all these fields in the correct order with the nonce and the timestamp. And I make sure that what I get is a signature that exactly matches the signature. So that way I know the request came from Vonage, and I have, later I'll try and show you like a replay attack where the signature doesn't validate, and that's exactly why we use this kind of security on our webhooks.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. I feel like this was a tangent.
It was, but it's a useful tangent.
I love tangents. I think I'm going to rename the show like technical tangents. Just like that's a.
There we go. That's our new Thursday show, Thursday Tangents. Tangent Thursdays.
I think that's exactly where we are, and I'm okay with that. And also getting some really good questions from the chat as well, so that's cool. Lauren likes it. It has a certain ring. It does. And it's a good summary of what happens when people drop in with good questions or we explain things on the show. So that is awesome. So we talked a little bit about the security side, Chris, and I'm going to pick on you because you have worked in engineering more recently than me, and I think you also have a better sense of like the operations side. If I was running a script like this, like on my web front end, or just like a root registered in an ordinary framework, and I'm receiving these messages, is there anything about this that makes you nervous? There's only one right answer, which is what I want to demo next, but also I'm interested in your like general advice and the way that you would approach this.
I mean, everything should make you nervous, accepting incoming data. The signatures do help quite a bit because you know that it's coming from a trusted source. If you do throw this up here, you have to be very careful about what you send back, because you don't want to just take everything at face value or return everything because who knows what actual data is coming along in the data packet, even if it is trusted from Vonage. Lorna's nodding, which is good.
I'm nodding.
Okay. Is that the answer you were looking for, or?
It's no.
Okay.
But I think that is really important. For me, the big worry has always been the burstiness of the incoming requests, and also like thinking about what happens if we like in this one I'm returning okay or yay. I'm not actually processing the data, but if you need to do a bunch of processing, then I feel like this could get quite unwieldy quite quickly, and it's something that I have traditionally moved off my web tier. What do you think?
Yeah, so in this case, if you do have to do a lot of processing on the stuff that's coming in, that may be where you just want to take this request and throw it in something like a work queue, and then process it out of band if this is something that you can process out of band. For the most part, with like our incoming SMS, I don't believe we do anything with the response. The Vonage doesn't do anything with the response you return. So you can easily take these, offload this work to somewhere else, and just have this as an incoming ingestion point for a lot of this, and then you can make that heavy lifting happen in various worker queues and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the kind of thing that I would always advise when people are processing potentially large numbers of these kinds of messages. I once worked on a system, it's not like I hadn't used queues before, but I once worked on a system that, I'm trying to think how it worked. It had a load of registration stuff, and it would send you a message, you had to click, so it had like an email confirm step and then an avatar upload. And then you could upload images and publish polls and things. We were soft live, which is the official term for we've deployed it but we haven't done any marketing yet. And a, not anymore but previously famous footballer in the UK tweeted it. Luckily for me, I was on a plane. So I completely missed this drama. And we were doing, everything was in a queue. So we had front end and back end APIs, a caching layer, and the registration, confirmation email stuff, and the avatar resizing and everything was all in a queue. And I had taken a lot of complaints because it was quite hard to debug it when we were building it. But actually, it stayed up, and we were friends with the hosting company that we had used. Shout out to Brightbox, they're amazing. And they sent me the numbers the next day. They were like, yeah, no, you were fine. And then they sent me the numbers the next day and said, I have no idea how this server stayed up. I mean, it was 4 servers or something, but yeah, it was a real challenge. So the queue has saved me more than once. And it's exactly for this reason that if we'd had all of that processing in real time, especially the image resize, on the front end, I don't think the web tier would have stayed up. I think it would have just all gone over. So it's all good.
I don't think people use queues enough. That's my hot take for the day. People don't use queues enough.
Yeah, we should clip that because I absolutely agree. I think there's a lot of good in queues, and depending on the queue platform that you choose as well, you can get a bunch of amazing value add out of it. So something, I don't think Beanstalk really does it, but RabbitMQ has something which is rather unattractively called a dead letter queue. It always makes me think of dead rabbits or something. And you can, if something goes wrong and the processing fails X number of times, you can redirect things to the queue, but that means if it's happening because a third-party service is down for 12 hours, then when it comes back up, you can connect the output of your queue back onto the input of where it should have been, and kind of put it back together. So it can protect you, especially at scale, from so much bad stuff. I think it's really valuable.
Yeah, Beanstalk's really nice to start prototyping, I think, but I usually end up going to RabbitMQ because of all those additional features.
Yeah, and that's exactly, so the demo that I have lined up, which Chris has seen because it's an existing open source project, is uses Beanstalk exactly because it runs really well and easily locally. I noticed we've got chat for talking about AWS support, and I think if you're already in the AWS stack, then using SQS or something is equally valid.
Mm-hmm.
If I was building this today, I might even push it into Redis queue. There's some really nice queue wrapper stuff in Laravel that's actually Redis. I've forgotten the brand name of it though.
Yeah, it's all Redis. I don't remember what the package name is either off the top of my head, but yeah, it's all backed by Redis.
Yeah, it's like Redis with a better user interface on the front. Like a really nice web interface, and I'm just going to reload you, Chris. Your camera's gone really funky.
Yep, it has.
There you are. You look much better. I'm just going to keep the reload button handy. So I think so we've got chat saying we're semi-familiar with Redis. So Redis is traditionally an in-memory key value store. It doesn't have to only be in memory, and it's got some wrappers that make it easy to use very simple queuing. But for something like this, where we're just looking to offload, I think it's absolutely perfect. And the integration with Laravel is really neat. So that's helpful. You can use Redis for caching web requests. Yeah, there's a bunch of different cache libraries that will use Redis or a whole load of different options. In this case, I'm specifically talking about a work queue, and I liked, Chris, that you made that distinction between work queue. We're not making a message queue. We could, but that's not what I've got. So I'm using Beanstalk D, which is running locally. Are you barking? Who's barking? It's not me. I have a cat.
It's me. My dogs are. It's not only is it trash day. My wife just got home, so the dogs are super excited about everything that's going on right now.
That is super nice. No stream is complete without dogs, as Kevin will tell you. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the number that I already used and I'm going to hook it up to another PHP application. Now we can do, I've got a Slim version, I've got a Laravel version. Do you have a preference?
I would prefer my dogs not bark. I think the Slim one is probably the easier one to understand. I think there's less moving parts. Not that there's anything wrong with the Laravel one, but the Slim one, there's less code we have to look at, I think, to accomplish the same task.
Well, also, we're only streaming for another 45 minutes, so the number of things I think are wrong with the Laravel one, I just don't think time allows. I'm going to get lynched by Laravel people. So Chris has shared the link with you. I love all of the micro frameworks. I think they're all amazing. And I'm going to show you this one. So, where's my screen? It's here. Excellent. And the project is open in one of these many tabs. Here it is, incoming SMS, Beanstalk D, PHP. Now I'm already running Beanstalk D. And then, oh, this is brilliant. My instructions say, remember to stop previous demo example server first. That is exactly the mistake I've made right now. Yes, there we go. Amazing. Anyone would think I'd done this before. Okay, we're going to start the web server. So in the same way, it's in the public directory. I'm like, no, I'm not starting the web server in the root directory. That seems really wrong. It's in the public directory. Let's try that again. I'm not sure what traffic I have, but you must be able to hear that. Okay. And we are up. I recently upgraded PHP, which is really nice, on my platform.
Hey, we have a meeting soon.
Yeah.
I just got the exact same notification.
And I only use Chrome for Twitch type things, and I need to somehow explain to the calendar that it needs to not send me all this stuff. That's not that useful. I am lost in Windows. Okay, right, so, oh, that's the other calendar.
That's your calendar now.
That's Firefox. Oh gosh. Awesome. Yes, I haven't mastered Do Not Disturb in Linux, so I clearly need to. And it doesn't normally bother me.
GNOME hasn't mastered it either, don't worry too much.
Yeah, Gnome is not on my side with this. I used to have a ThinkPad which had a hardware switch for Wi-Fi, and I used to literally switch the switch when I went on stage so that nothing could happen. Just be like, no, get off the internet. Doesn't work that well with streaming, turns out. Good. Check that ngrok is still running. I think so. Left over here somewhere.
Should be.
Yep, still running on 8080. So this ngrok will work with any of our backends. It's just linked through to whatever's running on my local port. Update the Nexmo number config. Right, so the path for this one, last time we were just super lazy and we just made it point to /. This time I need to update the number config and make it point to webhooks inbound SMS on this ngrok URL. So wherever I update that, who knows, I'll just use this terminal, it's fine. Link SMS, type the number, which is that. Anyone know what digit I just deleted? 7, I think. Now type this with /webhooks /inbound -SMS. I can hear Chris typing as well. This is cool. Okay. Got it. So, number updated. I'm going to text the number again, and let's flip over and watch the ngrok stuff come in. Greg is recommending that I don't turn off Wi-Fi at this moment. Thanks, Greg. Good advice. I did have one stream where I might as well have turned off the Wi-Fi because my computer just lost the will to live.
I mean, we could try.
No, you're all right. I can't. I can't type on my phone either, apparently. This is utter nonsense. Okay. So there's one request. That was probably you. You were probably faster than me. That's you. Yes. This is another test. And then mine, which says coding is fun. Awesome. So we've got some messages coming in. I want to show you the Beanstalk console. I don't know if you've seen that it has this web interface now. Which, in fact, it says there's a new version. Sorry, I haven't upgraded my Beanstalk console, but I'm sure the new version is awesome. I'm putting things into this tube channel? Tube for Beanstalk.
Yep.
Got it. And there are 2 jobs ready. So this is the job data. So that's Chris's first. He's here. And what we've done is we've put an item onto the queue. It has some metadata, and then it has this payload that actually does that. So I want to just dig around and show you the too many pieces of paper. Show you the slim code for this. So first of all, it is here. I'm running it here. Let's just get a new terminal and put it somewhere close to that one. In index.php, all that happens is we register that route. Should I say route?
Both work.
Register this route that we put on the end of our URLs for webhooks inbound SMS. And then take that request, do get query parameters, so the stuff that comes in on the get that we can see in ngrok, build some data, and then, tube, add it here onto the queue. So Chris, have a look at the data that I'm building on line 16. I've picked event message in case I wanted to have other incoming things, some text, like bringing one parameter out, and a timestamp and a payload. Is there anything else you would do here with payload design?
Offhand, I don't really think so, because you want to keep the original message as it comes in, so that's your payload. The big thing we're going to process is text, so that's a good one to pull out. So yeah, I don't think so.
No, I think this is fine. I have also worked on some like IoT sensor stuff, and with that we ended up pulling out maybe timestamp. There was some reason why we needed to get things back in a different order, or maybe we discarded messages older than a day or something like that. So then we pulled out extra fields.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll believe you.
No, that's cool. I'm just trying to pick your brain as I go through to see if there's like, what would you build here?
I mean, for what we're showing off, yeah, it's always best to pull out the things that you specifically want, but it's also a very good idea to keep the original payload
always
in
keep
case
everything.
you do need to change things.
This is truth. This is advice. Always do this. Keep everything. And I think that pattern of receive, store everything, and then acknowledge, and process it later is really good advice. So yes, always keep everything. I'm gonna engrave that on something and keep it.
Oh, always keep everything. Bald Bearded Builder asks if this is the correct place for cold fusion questions. I have done cold fusion, so sure. What question do you have?
Are you out trolling my trolls? Be careful.
I've done cold fusion before.
Excellent, good. Well, we would love to take all of your questions. So, Bald Bearded Builder, you are very welcome to ask. Let's dig into the config file because there's some setup here. It's not in the public directory. That makes sense. Why would you put your config file in the public directory? Now, the Beanstalk library in PHP is called Fiendstalk because, of course, it is.
We love our PHs.
I just...
My favorite is 7. It's the most neutral of all the PHs.
Oh, it's fine. Bald Bearded Builder has a PHP question for you.
He does have a question for that, and short of me repeating it, he'll need to speak to a more qualified person than me about his problem.
Well, I would prescribe this micro framework called Slim Framework because micro frameworks make everything better. That's my story. I learned it from Diana. Yeah, so you can see here that my config is super lightweight, and that's kind of, Beanstalk is not especially, I don't want to say complicated. It's not especially powerful. It's probably great for most use cases, and I came across it first from Python, and then used it in PHP later. So yeah, it's just a default host and port. So the environment, I'm using the Vance Lucas php.env here. So qhost is localhost, and the port is just the default, which for Beanstalk is 11300, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that is all good. Diana appeared when I said the word micro framework. It was like magic. If anyone doesn't know Diana, she's our Flask expert. So she is inspiring me to micro frameworks. And Slim in the PHP space is pretty similar along the micro framework lines. That you only have what you need and you add the extra pieces rather than starting with the kitchen sink.
Slim and Mezio are usually my two go-tos.
Okay, so that's the I'm stuck on Slim framework. The Laminas Slim.
Yes,
that's
the. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, can we drop links to Slim and Mezio in the chat?
We can do that
because they are both excellent for to solve your PHP related personal problems. We are being trolled, so I'm just gonna ignore that and keep going because what we've got now is we've got some messages come in, and if I have a look, did anyone else text in? Don't think so. Let's just have a quick. Where did I leave my tab? It's here. Okay, so we've got the two texts. So they came into different numbers. Those numbers have the same webhooks configured, so they come into the same application through ngrok to my local dev server. And we those are now in our queue. So you can see here, we've put things in the queue. This is everything that came in. And then there's another job, so we can have a look at those. So they're on the queue. We've acknowledged them, so we've successfully sent the OK. And if we'd done that wrong, we would see more retries coming in over ngrok. So we know that we've done that part right. Things are on the queue. What do we do now?
Now we need to work with those messages.
Yeah, we're being trolled from a place of love, apparently. Excellent. Well, that makes me feel so much better, right? Yeah, so we need to deal with those messages. So for that, I'm going to show you the worker scripts that I made you. They are here. Now, a worker script, there's nothing special about it. I think if you write workers in PHP, what will happen is somebody will tell you that you're doing it wrong. And actually, that person is doing it wrong.
Yep.
There are lots of reasons why people think you shouldn't write workers in PHP because they're long-running processes. So there's a bunch of stuff that we do day to day that probably would not be so cool, right?
I mean, there are, but really, since PHP 7, the garbage collection's gotten a lot better. So a lot of the memory issues and things like that have really been taken care of across this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of things that are acceptable in PHP that would be completely unacceptable in any other language. We very rarely close resource handles. We are often not defensive enough about initializing variables, and that's because when a web request comes in, we get a brand new PHP process, and when we finish sending the response, it gets garbage collected. So we never have that kind of long-running shared space issue. A worker is exactly a long-running process that's going to process a bunch of different jobs, one thing after the other. So it's, it's something to look out for when you build this, but don't be put off by, oh, you shouldn't do that in PHP, because you absolutely can. And if your team knows PHP, then it's definitely the right language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have built very large-scale systems using PHP-backed workers. The one thing I would say, and this I've seen this with every single language, is you probably only want them to process X number of things before killing and restarting them. Even in better garbage collected languages, you probably only want to process, a couple hundred messages in a single worker before you want to refresh it anyway. Because not just because of the language, but because of just little things that just never get properly garbage collected, stuff like that. So
I think that's really good advice. And I've also seen an implementation where exactly this, like the workers each processed 1,000 jobs, and then they would be terminated, and then there would be some sort of supervisor or system or whatever going over the top that would then restart that, and they were also using it for rolling deployment. So when it restarted, it got the latest version, but it didn't do that until it restarted. So they weren't doing like big bang deploys where you try and bring all your workers up at once. They were not doing that, and I thought that was quite neat.
Yep. Baldbeard Realtor has a question on Beanstalk. We were showing it is at beanstalkapp.com. No, Beanstalk, it's actually technically called Beanstalk D. It's just a little Q daemon that runs. I will post a link in the chat. Yep, that's it.
My link
but a little bit different. There is also, which makes it even more confusing, Amazon, I don't know if they still have it, but they used to have a service called Beanstalk, which was for auto-growing applications, or like auto-scaling, that made it even more confusing when you were running Beanstalk D inside Amazon's Beanstalk. So, yeah, there's a ton of things called Beanstalk, but this is technically called Beanstalk D.
And as if by magic, Chris the Link Fairy has produced you exactly what you needed.
Googling is 90% of my job, so I'm really good at it.
You are really good at it. That is absolutely true. I love that Michael has to preface when he isn't trolling us and would actually like us to do something. we've reached peak trollable. Cool. So what I have here is I have a couple of workers and classes. So these are just PHP classes. I'm going to show you them in a minute. A connection to Beanstalk. Some options. Some credentials. And then I just instantiate that thing. So this is just the config. And then worker.php actually does the work. That's a good name. So I'm sorry, I think that's my phone making that noise. So it picks up some setup, picks up the config that you've just seen, and then watches the queue. So if you remember when we put stuff on the queue, we did that with, we hard-coded the tube name to SMS. And so we're watching specifically that queue. So if I had a bunch of different things going on my beanstalk, that would be fine. And then we just loop, we just reserve this for a set amount of time, we try and process it, and if we do process it, then we can delete it. Notice that I've got this for useful for testing, and that just releases the job rather than deleting it, so that puts it back on the queue. Mm-hmm. So when I'm doing this again and again, I don't have to keep on putting things onto the queue. I can just try something, check the output, try something, check the output.
And Beanstalk does have all the kind of normal queue stuff where, like, if it you reserve it and you don't release it in time, it'll go back on the queue, checking for, like, how many times has it actually been on the queue. So if it's like, we've tried to process this like 7 times and it still doesn't work, you can check that and flow off of there. So Beanstalk does have a pretty decent set of, like, queue options to play with.
Okay, so we are configured to use just the ordinary worker. So I am going to start the worker process here. It's very important that you stop workers while you are developing with queues. Never develop with the workers working all the time, because on dev, the queues empty almost in real time. In my story with the image resize, I mean, you could upload your image, put the resize on the queue, and by the time we'd written the data to the database and then started assembling your response, the image would be ready by the time the browser was requesting it. So we never saw our fallback image. You have to stop your queues to know what happens when they're under load. In this case, everything processes so quickly you would never see there was anything in the queue because it would go on the queue and come straight back off again if the workers were running. So that's your top tip, is store everything. My top tip is always stop your queues randomly while you're working, because you have to know what happens when the response time is slow. Right, I'm halfway through typing a command. So there's our 2 messages being output, and if I start sending more messages in, they'll immediately end up there.
How quick between SMS and the queue? How quick is it?
Well, yours is there already.
Yep.
Mine is just coming. There's mine. So yeah, pretty quick. And I think the delay is mostly on, like, mobile network has to get into our servers at Vonage and then come through into me and then get processed through the queue. So these words have been on a journey. Mm-hmm. I'm going to stop the worker and switch over to the secure worker, and I'm going to show you the difference between the 2 classes. So this is the worker, and it instantiates with a thing, process, write to file, and it writes to file. Excellent. With the secure worker, which we're about to switch over and use, it first of all validates the message signature and then writes to the file. So it just uses the rather excellent PHP SDK that Chris is the maintainer of. Mm-hmm. And so you take the payload, you add your secret, and it validates. If we send a malicious message here that doesn't have the correct signature, and Chris, I don't know what will happen to yours, actually, because you don't have signatures.
We can find out.
It won't go through. We are exactly about to find out. So I just need to switch it up in the config, which instantiates which, whoa, not that button, Lorna. Instantiates which worker we should use. Alright, and then if I restart the workers, I mean, I can just come over to ngrok, right, and retry some of the, oh, you're already texting in. Retry some of these. Where's one of yours that doesn't have, yeah, and I'm going to send mine a couple of times. Oh, ha!
We blew it up.
We broke it.
I broke something.
You broke something. Undefined. So this isn't nearly defensive enough, because I've only tested it with my account, and I have signatures enabled. So if the signature's not there, it doesn't hand that at all. It's like, oh no. The PHP library throws a fatal error because the signature must be the string. Supplies the string or present in an array.
That sounds like I now have to make a GitHub issue and handle that better.
Like, well, at least let me. Well, I didn't. I think the fatal error is because I didn't catch invalid argument exception. It might have been me that added invalid argument exception, so that is embarrassing. So.
Oh yeah, because that is one of our custom exceptions. So yeah.
Yeah, so I probably should have caught that. So that's really interesting. And also, if you, for example, if you look in Beanstalk, oh, and all this stuff's stuck in the queue now.
But that's the good thing about a queue is our workers crash, but we're not going to lose any of the work we need to do.
We are not. We are going to fix this by writing in a more secure way. So I think it's this signature check will be failing.
Yes, that will throw an invalid argument exception.
So what I should do here is try catch.
Yep.
Around it. And you said it's invalid argument exception. I can't remember how to write PHP. Please shout if this is not going well.
Nope, that's fine. It's a global exception.
I wrote some PHP earlier and it was like, oh right, okay, yeah, no, I'll just put this together. So I opened a file and I opened the PHP tag and by line 5 there was a missing semicolon and I was like, I don't understand. I've not written a lot of PHP this week and sometimes it catches me out. Okay, so I'm just gonna...
Yeah, actually, you should probably do this under process and wrap your if statement in the try catch. So that way you return false. Otherwise, you're going to just dump this out and it's going to return true.
So, yeah, so what I want to do is... I'm going to return false from here.
Oh, okay, that'll work too.
Yes, you're right, I need a return value that makes sense to make the rest of the code work. So if it doesn't get it, it just doesn't write anything. So your messages should vanish, but mine should still work.
Yep.
Okay, if you have questions about try catch in PHP, anybody? They are also welcome in chat.
Ooh, and I think we're getting an addendum to try catch.
Are we getting
finally? I think we're getting finally.
Ooh, we're finally getting finally. I've only seen it in... hey, does Python have it? I think I've seen it in Java.
I mean, other languages do have it. I can't remember where we're stealing it from. Finally was added in 5. No, in PHP 5.5 and later, a finally block. That's been since 5.5. We're adding something to this. Continue on. I'm gonna read the internet.
Okay, I want to know what happens. It's hilarious that it was new in 5.5. Then I gave the talks with this in, but I don't know. I put other stuff in that storage space in the meantime. I'm going to restart the workers. In fact, let's just clear the screen so we can see what's going on. I'm going to restart the workers, and they're the secure workers. Hopefully they're not going to lie down and cry because of missing data, but we may not see Chris's messages coming through.
It shouldn't, hopefully.
Oh, it's still... I caught this in the wrong place. Insecure worker...
Signature must be, so that gets thrown. Oops.
So the worker calls process on secure worker. Secure worker calls validate message. Next one client signature calls check. So, but I thought I had that wrapped. In try catch uncaught invalid argument exception. Maybe I spelled that wrong. I'm just going to switch it out to be like a more general exception in case it's...
Yeah, just do / exception. And
yeah.
It's not the right way to do it. Other slash. Sorry. Yep.
I do write PHP honestly. Like we can probably find video of me explaining the finally clause.
Try signature catch exception E. Yeah.
So if this exceptions, I should get this. Should I split the return out and then I could debug it?
No, because I think that because it's either gonna be return true or return false.
I'm just gonna give this another go. How handy that I brought Chris with me for this. Yay! Okay, so that's the var dump of the exception, and my stuff is all coming through. Coding is fun, but yours, this hello is yours, isn't it? This hello is, I mean, this var dump is a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello probably would have been mine.
Okay. And yeah, so we get, and that hacker one is yours as well. So the signature is not there because you don't have the signatures enabled on your account, and it's actually your account that's webhooking into me. This all makes sense to me. Awesome. Cool. And so with this, then I can detect where we don't have signatures. I'm just going to take that incredible var dump out because it's making the output really hard to read. I mean, that's what it is in this case. I mean, you could get the problem with writing a really specific error like this, like signature not found, inside a generic catch exception, is if something else goes wrong completely, you're going to get the error message signature not found, and that might not be the problem.
Yeah, I think the problem was we didn't have a slash in front of invalid argument exception.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I am going to just quickly go and show you. I want to show you two things. The first one is that just came in again. That was you. The next one is this, which is one of mine. And let's have a look at the output so far. So we've got an undefined index. That's you with your test. And the words signature not found. Then we've got mine, coding is fun. That's coming in okay. But what I'm going to do now is I am going to get the raw. You're going to enjoy this. I'm going to grab all of this. And I'm going to put it in Postman. Whatever I was doing in Postman before is not important. Don't save. Oh yeah, I was doing a demo last night. That's fine. So I've got a new request. I'm going to first of all paste the ngrok URL. Then I'm going to paste what I just copied as the raw thing. I've got 2 slashes in the middle. Hold on. Okay. And Postman nicely puts these fields out for me, which is cool. So I can send that. That's great. And then if I look here, you can see my coding is fun thing came through. But get this. Postman. If I change my message, where's the rest of the fields? Here we go. If I change the message, so I can copy this and replay it, you've seen that the replay, because it has a signature, you need to check the timestamps as well. That's why they're there, to check that they are now and not a year ago. This code does not check the timestamps because I do have a stored request that I use if I have to demo this without working internet. So I don't have that checked, but you could. If I change this and send it, I expected the signature check to fail. I've done something wrong there. Because that field, when you change any part of it, that field should cause it to change. Not such a great demo. Maybe I've just got it echoed out anyway somewhere. Gonna have a quick dig around. What's going on?
I'll look on my screen. I didn't have this code up in front of me, but let's see.
Yeah, you have a dig around your side.
Source worker, nope, secure worker. You returning just true false. Write to file.
Oh, I think I'm logging it anyway, but it won't end up in the file. Yeah.
Yes, so you error log the text, but it won't be in your text file. Yeah.
Got it. So if I run this worker, I'm just going to probably empty the file. I've got a bunch of things running. I'm quite confused now. Okay, let's pop this back over here. What's in messages.txt? Everything that we've worked on. So if I
but you didn't get your coding as great.
But I didn't get coding as great. Yeah, I was going to clear it out and try again. But you're right. This does demonstrate that it doesn't work. So because the signature doesn't check out, we just silently bin that data and assume that it's negative. Now, in this example, I am accepting whatever I'm sent, putting it into the queue, and letting the workers deal with it later. I'm never really sure, and I think the right answer is it depends, when you would do it that way and when you would want to do this signature check up front before you even put it on the queue.
I would say it probably depends on where you can spare the CPU cycles. I would probably do it in the worker because you can always spread out your workers more. So if your queue's ballooning up, you could throw more workers in it. I would only probably put it on the web front end if it's causing such a problem with your workers that your workers can't handle it. But that'll be at the expense of now you have to do the signature check. It's not a huge amount of CPU, but if you're running on some fairly small servers, I mean, like realistically, a lot of people deploy stuff with only one virtual CPU or two virtual CPUs nowadays. That can have an impact on how much traffic you can ingest at one point. So,
yeah.
The answer is it depends. Like any good technical question, it depends.
The answer is it depends. I think I agree with that, and it's quite a it's a bit like payload design. I can wave my hands in the air and say you probably should include this, and maybe pull out some fields that you want and like put it in a queue. But if you have to use a database, you can, and if you have to process it up front, because for whatever reason you can, or if you know that actually you're getting a lot of malicious incoming webhooks. Let's say that you are under attack, but the signature check, which on the PHP side, just like it's a one-liner in the library, right?
Yep.
It's not that labor intensive, so you could do it up front, depending what the security is that you're dealing with. Then go for it. So there's lots of reasons why you might choose one way or another.
And if it's really bad, you can have everything dump into one big queue, have another set of workers check whether it's valid or not, and if they're valid, dump them into another queue, and have a valid worker queue, or like a valid message queue. So it really kind of depends on like what is your actual workload and how badly do you need to scale these things out.
Well, and how bursty is it? I drink with the developers in Leeds that work in leisure gaming, so it's very sports oriented. So I'm just reloading. You've gone interesting, and so on a busy sporting day with a bunch of football on and maybe a horse race, then it's that's a serious peak. Whereas most systems won't see that. They might see like a time zone specific pattern, but they won't see these incredible upward cliff edges. So it very much, the answer is it depends, as you say. Awesome. I feel like we're kind of, that demo worked and I have good feelings about kind of showing off webhooks. Is there anything else we should have included today, or if the chat was hoping for something they didn't get, you should tell us? I'll start with you, Chris, because you can talk while they're typing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it shows off what a webhook is. It's something coming into your application. We specifically at Vonage have a couple things you can do like with the signatures, but overall any system like coming from like GitHub is the same idea. They're going to send you a message, you have to deal with it. The queuing's a good idea if it's something that you don't have to take care of right then at that second. I've used queuing with GitHub stuff a lot because most of the time I just want to like inspect GitHub changes or things like that. I don't need to do that while GitHub sends me the message. I can dump them in a queue, process them offline, because sometimes that can take, depending on what I'm doing, 2-3 seconds, which is not as long as GitHub wants to wait around. So no, I think it shows off quite a bit of things, but if anybody does have any questions or...
Yeah,
that works too.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point actually about this isn't always the right way to tackle it. I'm thinking of some of our voice API webhooks where
you do have to be very reactive.
Something happens during a call and you have, it's a really short response time. For all of your webhooks, you must acknowledge immediately, and that's like a half-second response time. But for voice, you can't process it and deal with it later because it's a request to transfer a call. There are humans waiting, and there's lots of scenarios in the web world where that's also the case. Like, if someone's requested something and they're waiting for the page load, then you might want to prioritize that queue, and lots of different queuing tools have ways of doing that.
Yeah, and I mean, especially with voice, like depending on how quickly it does need to come back, the webhooks work fairly well. But then you might even want to look at WebSockets because those are a much more immediate response type. But for the most part, like a lot of this stuff, like taking incoming messages, the users in a textual medium, a user's probably fine to wait 2-3 seconds. So you can decide, do I need to offload it to a queue, whatever. But yeah, I think a lot of it depends on like how quickly will the user wait. On a phone system, it's really hard to make the user wait more than a second because I will get frustrated right away. I will start mashing 0.
Yeah, and you start to wonder.
Talk to somebody.
Start to wonder if the system went away, or you know, if something's gone wrong. If you're paying for a call that's got nobody on the other end. So even if all we do is put someone into a conference with a holding music, or you know, speak them some sort of greeting, it has to happen quite quickly in voice.
Yeah, and I mean, thankfully, webhooks do happen very quick. Vonage sends them out very quickly, so a lot of it just depends on how quickly can you process those messages.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I have a couple of things in this week that you may have seen if you're watching or watching it later. That if you have questions, then I'm planning to do the stream in 2 weeks, which will be an I can't speak anymore. HTTP tools type stream. So things that you've seen today, like ngrok, I think I was using curl early on, and those types of things I'm going to include. And I'm basically taking requests for what you think would be interesting. So I'm going to try and, you saw Postman today. Yeah, I'm going to include some Postman, maybe some different HTTP clients. So if you have any questions, anybody can just like ping us on Twitter in the meantime, or ask in chat if you're quick. Something like that. Really conscious that when our meeting alert went off, then the people that we know that have to be in the same meeting all also went off, because that's how that works. Yeah, so definitely pop in for that in a couple of weeks. What else do we need to say?
I don't know. I don't have anything going on, so. We do have, if you do use our PHP SDK, we're going to have a fairly large rewrite dropping soon. A lot of nice cleanup and changes to the SDK are coming down the line. So really happy months down the line. Months of work have come down the line. We do have a sneak preview branch. There's 2 actually alpha branches out there right now. If you look at the repository, there's a V220, which is a nice little upgrade branch. And then V3 alpha has all of the upcoming changes. So all the code snippets are getting nicely updated. A lot of the cleanliness around the SDK is getting updated, so I'm really excited for that.
I'm also really excited. I feel like it's something we've talked about for a while, but I've been able to actually play with demo versions. I love that everything's on GitHub, it's open source, so we can just send people over. Yeah, so if you're already using our PHP SDK, I think the advice is upgrade to 2.2 when it goes stable. You can play with it now. Don't deploy to production now. It's still alpha, but you will want that 2.2 release, and it should be safe when it comes. If you're starting a new project, then check out the V3, because there's some real goodness in that, and it's I find it quite a modern change, and I think that's what you're aiming for. But it really feels like something made, in the last 5 years, and takes advantage of a bunch of the features that have come into the language, because PHP does not stand still, which is quite difficult for those of us who just dip in. I think I know some PHP, but
and hopefully it's still easy enough to use for people that are just dipping in and out.
Absolutely, and because we publish all the code snippets as well, I think it's quite approachable. So yeah, big thumbs up to the PHP, and of course you can always tweet either the Vonage Dev account or Chris, or talk to us on our GitHub issues if you want anything. If you have questions or suggestions for us, then that is a really good way to get hold of us. All right, I am calling it good. Thank you so much for joining me on stream, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. All right, everybody. That's it for today. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. And take care.
Bye, everybody.